A hospital nurse casually mentioned the name of the man, who was riding with my wife when their car smashed into a pole at 2 a.m. And in that single moment, my marriage was over, before I could even register the fact that she might have died. The instant I realized she wasn't alone, any concern I had for whether she survived simply vanished. I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out. I'm not the bad guy here. My name is Carlos. I'm 33. What I'm sharing took place about 10 months ago. Some moments feel brand new, others feel like ancient history. I genuinely believed our marriage was strong. We'd been a couple for 6 years, married for 4, still exchanging goodbye kisses each morning and sending each other silly memes throughout the day. My wife, Alina, is 31 and works in marketing. She's the type everyone adores at gatherings, witty, warm, always knowing the perfect thing to say so you feel noticed and valued. I felt fortunate, like I'd somehow hit the jackpot by finding a partner who truly wanted to create a future together. Looking back, I see how blind I was, but back then I honestly thought we were content. That Friday night, Alina walked into the living room with her weekend bag already ready and explained she was heading upstate to visit her friend Laura. Laura, she said, had just endured a brutal breakup and was falling apart, crying nonstop, barely eating. I thought it was touching that my wife was so devoted to her friends. I even helped load the bag into her car. I offered to check her tires since the last service had been a while ago. She smiled, gave me a quick kiss, and teased that I worried too much. She promised to message when she arrived safely. I stood in the driveway waving as she drove off, then went inside to watch a film I'd been meaning to see. I trusted her without a second thought. That complete trust is what still stings the most whenever I remember it. She sent a text around 9 p.m. saying she'd made it, and that Laura was in even worse shape than expected. I replied with a heart and asked her to pass on a hug from me. I went to sleep alone, feeling thankful I married someone so caring. Saturday morning, I woke up expecting a message, maybe a photo of them having coffee or doing something relaxing. Nothing came. I told myself they'd probably slept late. By afternoon, I started feeling uneasy but didn't want to seem clingy. Around 6 p.m., I'd sent 3 messages and called twice. Both went straight to voicemail. Worry crept in. That gnawing sense that something isn't right but you can't name it. By 1 a.m., I was walking circles in the house, debating whether to phone the police. I was actually searching for the non-emergency line when my phone rang, unknown caller. I answered instantly. A calm female voice asked if I was Carlos Mendez. I said yes. She identified herself as a nurse from County General Hospital and said my wife, Alina, had been brought in about an hour earlier after a car crash. She was stable but injured and I should come as soon as possible. My vision blurred. My wife, hurt, possibly dying. I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes and asked what happened. Concussion, cuts, maybe a broken rib, the nurse explained. Alina was awake and asking for me. Then she added the detail that froze everything inside me. Sir, I should let you know your wife wasn't the only person in the vehicle. I went still. After a beat, I asked what she meant. The other person was a Mr. Adrian Velasco, also hurt and being treated in the emergency room. Adrian Velasco. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Alina had brought him up a few times, always offhand, never important sounding. Some freelance artist she'd met through a work event. He'd supposedly connected her with a designer or pointed out an art exhibit. Mentioned just enough to feel casual, never enough to raise flags. The nurse checked if I was still on the line. I mumbled yes. She asked again if I was coming in. I glanced around our living room. The sofa where we'd cuddled through movies, wedding pictures on the wall, the coffee table where we'd eaten breakfast just yesterday. I thanked her quietly and ended the call mid-sentence as she mentioned Alina asking for me again. I placed the phone on the counter like it might break, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at nothing for what could have been minutes or hours. My wife had fabricated the entire weekend. No visit to Laura. She'd driven off to be with Adrian Velasco. She looked straight at me, accepted my help with the bag, let me worry about her safety, and left to spend the night with someone else. Then they'd crashed together at 2 a.m. on their way back. I didn't shout or cry or smash anything. I simply sat there, hollowed out, like someone had removed every emotion and left only the automatic act of breathing. Right then my marriage died, not later when papers were signed or when I left the house, but at that kitchen table at 2:30 a.m., still in yesterday's sleep shirt. Ignoring the hospital's repeated calls. My injured wife was requesting me, and I wasn't going. People would judge me as cruel, and for once I didn't care. The woman I'd vowed to stand by in sickness and health had just proven she was a complete stranger. I know some will say I should have rushed to the hospital, at least checked on her condition before deciding anything. Perhaps they're correct. But in that instant I understood. The detailed deception, the invented emergency with Laura, the deliberate setup. This wasn't a slip-up. It was intentional. Someone capable of lying that convincingly to your face is capable of almost anything. That realization scared me more than the crash itself. I stayed at the table until dawn, watching the phone vibrate with calls I refused to take. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was numb, in the kind of shock where pain hasn't arrived yet. Around 7 a.m. I called Laura, the supposed friend in crisis. She picked up sounding half asleep. I asked if Alina was still there. Silence. Then confusion. I repeated the story about the breakup and the weekend support trip. Another pause. Carlos, I'm not going through any breakup. And Alina isn't here. I haven't seen her in weeks. Is she all right? I said everything was okay, thanked her, and hung up. Something inside me shattered. The affair itself was devastating, but the elaborate falsehood, the choice of Laura as cover because she knew I'd never doubt it, the invented drama, the performance, was what truly destroyed me. She hadn't cheated impulsively. She'd engineered a whole alternate version of reality. I needed to see the wreckage. I phoned the police, got the tow yard location, drove over with our marriage certificate and registration. They allowed me to view the car. The front was crushed, windshield gone, dried blood on the driver's headrest. But the overnight bag in the back seat hit harder, partially open, clothes tumbling out. I reached in and found lingerie, our special anniversary pieces, black lace and red silk she once worn for me with that shy, sweet look. She brought them for him. A smaller bag held condoms, massage oil, nice wine. This was no spur-of-the-moment decision. Then I noticed the car seat, my nephew's, still buckled in the back where I'd secured it 2 weekends earlier for family. Alina had seen it there. She'd known it was in the vehicle and still rode off with another man, willing to gamble not just her life, but potentially a child's if plans had shifted. That was the final break. The woman I loved wouldn't behave with such disregard. The Alina I thought I knew had never truly existed. I photographed everything: the bag, the lingerie, the extras, the child's seat. Proof for later, maybe for court, maybe just to remind myself this wasn't a nightmare I invented. I shut the door, drove home silently, ignored the growing list of missed calls from the hospital, from strangers, from Alina's sister Anna. At home, I researched divorce lawyers, read reviews, booked a consultation with someone experienced in difficult cases. Then I began separating my clothes from hers in the closet. Not leaving yet, but I couldn't stand seeing our things mixed together anymore. Anna called that afternoon, upset, asking why I hadn't gone to the hospital, how I could leave Alina when she was injured. I explained calmly that I couldn't stay with someone who deceived me so thoroughly and that I was starting divorce proceedings. She went quiet, asked what deception. I told her the full truth. Laura's denial, Audrian in the car, the lingerie, all of it. Long silence. She said she needed time to absorb it and would call back. She didn't that day. When she resumed calling, it was to plead that I visit Alina anyway because family is family. Her parents reached out too, especially her father, insisting marriages face tough times and you don't discard years over one incident. One incident. They reduced 7 months of secrecy to a single bad night. They didn't want to hear about the planning or the false story or the friend used as cover. To them, I was the villain abandoning a hurt woman. My friends were divided, some backed my choice, others felt I was too severe and should wait until she healed. But they missed the point. This wasn't about her injuries or the hospital. It was about discovering the person I'd married was an illusion. How do you rebuild trust when you realize you never truly knew who you were sleeping beside? I filed 5 weeks after the crash. Alina was discharged by then, recovering at Anna's. Papers were delivered there. She contested everything, the house, accounts, even small items, as if keeping possessions could prove the marriage had been real. Her side portrayed me as heartless, abandoning my injured wife over an exaggerated mistake. My lawyer submitted everything, subpoenaed records showing months of contact, credit card charges for hotels and dinners I'd never seen, the impound lot photos. It hadn't been one night. It had lasted nearly 7 months. Seeing the timeline in documents felt both validating and crushing. I'd lived inside a deception for over half a year without suspecting. 7 months after the accident, once the divorce was final, the house sold, assets split down to the last teaspoon, I made one last call. Not for reconciliation or forgiveness, just to make one fact clear. She answered with a trace of hope in her voice. I spoke before she could. I didn't walk away because you were with him in the car. I walked away because you were capable of lying so smoothly, planning so thoroughly, and risking so much for what you wanted. I left because I no longer knew who you were, and I couldn't live wondering what else you might hide. Silence. Then she talked about feeling trapped, needing something I couldn't provide, making regrettable decisions. As if any of that excused the betrayal. I told her I hoped she found peace, truly meant it, but I could no longer be part of her world. I ended the call. That was 3 months ago, no contact since. People still ask if I regret skipping the hospital, if I wish I'd acted differently, if I was too unforgiving. The answer is no. I didn't desert an injured wife. I shielded myself from someone who'd been deceiving me so skillfully that I'd mistaken the performance for love. Perhaps that makes me seem cold, but it also makes me free. Some survive car wrecks. I survived a marriage built on someone else's fiction. What I've taken from this: trust means believing that if pain comes, it will be accidental, not orchestrated. Alina didn't stumble. She chose, repeatedly, over months. Each decision revealed her true character. I only wish I'd seen it earlier. So if someone demonstrates who they truly are, trust that evidence immediately. Don't wait for excuses, second tries, or apologies. Acting on that truth the first time can spare you years of illusion. And if you've ever felt guilty for leaving someone who wounded you deeply, you don't owe them your pain. Not your partner, not relatives, not friends, not anyone online with opinions. You owe yourself tranquility. Sometimes tranquility requires closing the door on people you once cherished. That isn't cruelty. That's self-preservation. What are your thoughts on this? Feel free to share.